Something is happening inside the Aston Martin factory that should terrify every other team on the Formula One grid. While Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull are finalising their designs and booking their flights to Barcelona, reports have leaked that Adrian Newey has thrown a hand grenade into the timeline of the AMR26. We are hearing that the greatest designer in the history of the sport has deliberately delayed the sign-off on the car's most critical component, the suspension, until the absolute last second. In the high-stakes world of F1 manufacturing, a delay like this usually screams panic. It usually means the wind tunnel numbers are bad or the crash tests failed. But this is not a normal team, and this is not a normal year. This is the start of the 2026 regulations, the biggest rule change in a generation. And when Adrian Newey hits the stop button, he isn't panicking, he is loading a weapon. Today, we are going to expose exactly what is happening behind the closed doors at Silverstone. We are going to look at the 24-hour rule that Newey is using to hold the team hostage, the brutal internal war between pushrod and pullrod philosophies, and the terrifying reality of the Honda engine crisis. If you think the 2026 season hasn't started yet, you are wrong. It is being decided right now in a meeting room in England, and the result is either going to be a championship for Fernando Alonso or the most expensive failure in F1 history. Let's start with the delay itself. Why would anyone risk running out of time before testing? To understand this, you have to understand the specific methodology Newey brought with him from Red Bull. It is called the 24-hour rule. In his autobiography, Newey detailed this process explicitly. He demands that before any major, irreversible design decision is sent to the manufacturing floor, the engineering team must sit on it for a full day and night. They have to stare at the data, they have to argue, they have to try and destroy their own idea. If after 24 hours of cold, hard scrutiny, the concept still looks like a world beater, then and only then do they push the button. This rule is designed to kill groupthink. It stops engineers from rushing a mediocre idea just to meet a deadline. In 2022, Mercedes rushed a concept that looked great in the computer, but bounced them out of the championship on the track. Newey waited, he was patient, and Red Bull produced the RB18, a car that was stable, smooth and dominant. He is applying that exact same pressure right now. The rumour is that the suspension architecture for the AMR26 was supposed to be signed off weeks ago, but Newey wasn't convinced. He saw something, or perhaps he saw what everyone else was missing. So, what is the technical secret he is chasing? This is where we have to get smart for a minute. The 2026 cars feature active aerodynamics. This is the game changer. The wings move, the drag reduces on the straights, and increases in the corners. This puts a completely different load on the suspension compared to the cars we have watched for the last 4 years. The suspension isn't just holding the wheels on anymore, it is the primary device for controlling the aerodynamic platform. The entire grid is currently fighting a war between two concepts, pushrod versus pullrod. To keep it simple, the industry trend is moving towards pushrod at the front. Audi is doing it. Red Bull is doing it. It lifts the components high up, clearing the airflow to the floor, which is where 60% of the downfall comes from. It seems like the obvious choice, but obvious is not a word Adrian Newey likes. If Newey is delaying the decision, it suggests he might be looking at a pullrod front end or a hybrid geometry that nobody else has thought of. A pullrod sits lower. It gives you a lower center of gravity, which helps tire wear and mechanical grip. If Newey can make a pullrod work aerodynamically, specifically by cleaning up the airflow around the lower wishbones, he effectively gets a double advantage. He gets the downfall of the others plus the mechanical grip they sacrificed. That is the holy grail. That is what he is waiting for. And if he finds it, Aston Martin will start the season with an unfair advantage that cannot be copied for months. But this search for perfection has triggered a civil war of philosophies inside the team, and this is the drama the press releases won't tell you about. Last year, Aston Martin hired Enrico Cardile as their chief technical officer. Cardile is a brilliant engineer, but he is a Ferrari man through and through. At Ferrari, he was the grid's biggest defender of the pullrod suspension. He publicly stated that there was no performance difference between the two concepts, even when the rest of the world disagreed. Now imagine the scenes in the boardroom. You have Cardile, who trusts his data saying pullrod is fine. You have the existing Aston Martin engineers who have been building pushrod cars. And then you have Newey, the god of aerodynamics, telling everyone to stop and think again. This tension is dangerous. If the team fractures, if the engineers stop trusting the leadership because the deadlines are being missed, the car will fail. But if this creative conflict forces them to find a better solution, it's a masterstroke. We also have to talk about the simulation tools, because this is where the story gets darker. When Newey first assessed the Aston Martin factory, reports suggest he was brutally honest. He allegedly called their simulation tools weak. He noted that the driver in the loop simulator, the video game the drivers used to test the car, was not collating with reality. In modern F1, you cannot test on track. You get 3 days in Barcelona and that's it. You rely on the simulator. If your simulator says the suspension works, but the track says it doesn't, you are driving blind. Aston Martin has been frantically upgrading their facilities, hiring new staff and bringing in Newey's old colleagues from Red Bull to fix this, but you cannot buy time. By delaying the suspension choice, Newey is putting immense pressure on a simulation department that he has already identified as a weak link. He is betting that his intuition is better than their computer data. That is a level of arrogance that only a man with 25 world championships can get away with. And then there is the engine. The 2026 regulations require a 50-50 split between electric power and the combustion engine. This means a massive battery and massive cooling requirements. Honda is returning as Aston Martin's factory partner, and they are already sounding the alarm. Koji Watanabe, the boss of Honda Racing, admitted that not everything is going well with the engine packaging. Here is the conflict. Newey wants a car that is shrink-wrapped. He wants the bodywork tight to reduce drag. Honda needs space to cool a battery that is pushing out 350 kilowatts of energy. If you wrap the car too tight, the engine overheats and explodes. If you open up the cooling louvers, you create drag and you are slow on the straights. This delay in the chassis sign-off is a nightmare for Honda. They need to know where to put the radiators, the intercoolers and the piping. Every day Newey waits is a day Honda loses. So why do we have any hope? Why aren't we just writing this off as a disaster? Because we have seen this movie before. Cast your mind back to 2009, the Brawn GP story. That was a team that had no money, no time and barely had an engine, but they had a loophole, the double diffuser. They found a trick in the regulations that nobody else saw. They turned up to the first test late, did a few laps and destroyed the entire field. Damon Hill, the world champion, thinks Newey is cooking up a Brawn GP moment for 2026. He called Newey a master of seeing through the regulations. If Newey has found a loophole in the active aero rules, a way to stall the wings more effectively, or a way to manipulate the ride height with the suspension, then the delay is irrelevant. A fast car that is late is always better than a slow car that is on time. The F1 history proves that. The MP418 McLaren designed by Newey was a failure because it was too fragile. The RB5 Red Bull was late, but it was a rocket ship. He knows the difference. The human cost of this gamble falls on one man, Fernando Alonso. He is turning 45 this season. He is fitter than ever, hungrier than ever, but he is running out of sand in the hourglass. He signed a contract extension specifically for this car, specifically for Newey. He is watching this delay and he knows what it means. It means all or nothing. There is no development year for Alonso anymore. If this car arrives in Barcelona and the suspension is wrong or the engine overheats, Alonso's career likely ends without that third title. But if it works, if he gets a car that is half a second clear of the field, we are looking at the greatest comeback story in sports history. The clock is ticking louder than ever. Testing begins in Barcelona on January 26th. The first race in Melbourne is just weeks after Matt. By holding back the design, Newey has compressed the manufacturing timeline into a diamond. The mechanics will be working triple shifts. Parts will be flown in via private jet the night before the test. It's going to be chaotic, it's going to be stressful. But looking at the dull, convergent designs coming out of the other teams, maybe chaos is exactly what Aston Martin needs. We are witnessing a high-stakes poker game played by a genius. He has pushed his chips into the middle of the table, he has paused the game, and he is staring down Ferrari and Red Bull. Now, I need you to make a prediction. Is this delay the sign of a genius finding a loophole or a disaster waiting to happen? I want you to comment just one word below, genius or disaster. I'll be reading the comments to see where the F1 community stands. And listen, if you want to be the first to know what the AMR26 actually looks like when it finally launches, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. We'll be analysing every pixel of that suspension the second it drops. Don't miss it. Click that button and I'll see you in the next one.